Thanks everybody for joining us for this session. We are going to be discussing the evidence in governance and politics. That's what EGAP stands for, Learning Days Initiative. And so we have myself, I'm Cyrus Samii. I am the Executive Director of EGAP. I'm also a professor of politics at New York University. And then also with me today is Nahomi Ichino. Nahomi is EGAP's training director, and then also professor of political science at Emory University. So first, for those who aren't familiar with EGAP, I just want to provide a brief introduction. So EGAP, it stands for Evidence in Governance and Politics. And so it is a research and collaboration network. We have a headquarters at UC Berkeley, but we're sort of distributed around the world. It operates very much like a collective. And the focus of EGAP is to promote research and learning in a collaborative, Matt, go back. Okay, promote research and learning in a collaborative manner in various domains of governance. Those include institutions and governance, mitigation of societal conflict, reducing poverty and inequality, and elections, representation, and political participation. Next slide, please. We have a membership that consists of 237 academics and practitioners around the world. So the map on the right shows the home countries of the members of the EGAP network. We're trying to expand even further. What we try to do through the network is to support researcher and practitioner collaborations in learning about governance innovations. We have a strong emphasis on experimentation, so using experiments to test new concepts and innovations in these various domains of governance. The way that we support each other in this network is in teaching methodological skills. So we have certain members in the network who have very deep expertise in methodology, and so they contribute by, offering that expertise and teaching that expertise to other members of the network. We support the design and implementation of research, and in particular experimental research, and then we support this sort of work in the form of various dissemination and learning events. So we organize policy forums, we have online content, and other media through which we try and disseminate findings. The a current goal that we have in the network is to promote inter-regional collaborations that includes between Global South and Global North researchers and practitioners, but then also just more horizontally across regions. We do this in different ways, including through something called the Meta-Keta initiative, which involves the establishment of coordinated randomized control trials across countries. And we've done 4 of those to date. We have a 5th in process. If you go onto the EGAP website, you can see more about that. And then a new emphasis that we have is to promote intra-regional collaboration through the establishment of regional hubs. So what we're trying to do now is basically extend the EGAP model more deeply into different regions around the world by establishing regional hubs, out of which the types of activities that we list up here could be taking place in a more localized and regional manner. And so we have the first hub up and running in Bogota, Colombia, and we hope to have additional hubs coming online in the coming years soon. Next slide. Okay, so what I'd like to do is to pass it to Nahomi, our trainings director, to talk about the Learning Days initiative.
Thanks, Cyrus. Can I just check that you can hear me? Okay, great. So Cyrus has described many of the things that EGAP does, and one of our big initiatives is the Learning Days. So we started about 7 years ago with a couple aims. The first of these is to strengthen capacity for experimental social science research amongst principal investigators. And that means academics, evaluators in civil society organizations, and governments who are going to lead research in Latin America and Africa. We also wanted to support Global South instructors and learners with methodological resources, and we've made several resources available in an open access format. And then we also wanted to create and nurture links amongst researchers, including with the EGAP network and researchers in the Global South, and between researchers and policymakers across the world. And this is particularly important to us because we believe the best research is designed with a good understanding of both the context and the available policy options, and building on and contributing to social science and behavioral sciences, and conducted with the most appropriate methodologies. And bringing this all together is quite a task. And so the Learning Days workshops, which I'll talk about in a second, are really about trying to address these aims. And so the workshops themselves are, they're week-long, and they've been held in Africa and Latin America. They're hosted by an institutional partner, and that could be a university or a civil society organization. And the typical format is that we have 5 instructors and a 3-to-1 participant-instructor ratio. So a lot of time for everybody to have conversations about the various projects. So the participants themselves come with their own projects. And the workshops start with an introduction to causal inference and go all the way to a full experimental research design. And we do this through a combination of lectures, design talks, where an experienced researcher talks about how they solved some problem they encountered while trying to design a project or execute a project, with some exercises, and then just lots and lots of one-on-one meetings. And over the many iterations of this workshop, we've honed a pretty good curriculum for a 1-week format and developed these open source materials. And then, the instructors themselves come from all over the EGAP network. So the instructors are EGAP members who are typically professors, but also PhD students, and they volunteer their time and expertise. They select the participants out of the applicant pool. They prepare to deliver lectures, and then for the week on the ground, they are there full time. About 20, a little more than 20 instructors have been involved. And there are also other EGAP members who've really contributed with their teaching resources. And we'd like to say special thanks to the EGAP team, and particularly Matt Lisecki, who's been on the ground and managed all the logistics for these workshops. And our participants come from around the world. They come from 26 countries in Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa, and we've had over 120 participants. And you can see where our participants are from with the orange shading, and where our workshops have been with the stars. So we started in Sierra Leone, then we moved to Ghana, then Chile, Malawi, Guatemala, Abu Dhabi, Montevideo, Bogota, and most recently Cotonou and Benin. And for each workshop, we receive hundreds of applications. And typically the host institution, the host site has about 5 participants, and then we're able to fly in about 10 participants from the region, thanks to the generous support of the Hewlett Foundation. So we're able to offer the travel and accommodations and meals for participants from these regions. And then the participants themselves, you can see there are many of us from our many sites, and they've gone on to a lot of great success. About 1/3 of the recipients of the recent EGAP COVID-19 grants have been Learning Days alumni. Some of our participants have gone on to start their academic careers in Europe or the US, and some continue to engage our network as collaborators or just becoming members themselves. So, we think the Learning Days, the EGAP Learning Days, have had a lot of success in achieving our aims over the last 7 years. And one of these is that we've been able to support collaborative research by scholars in the Global South. So our friend Esther Owele here, she and her colleague Janet Langat received one of these COVID-19 grants, and they are studying the effect of information on compliance with public health measures in Kenya. She was a participant in the Cotonou Learning Days that were hosted by the African School of Economics in 2019. She, like her regular position, is as an analyst at the Busara Center for Behavioral Economics in Nairobi. The Busara Center itself is an institutional member of EGAP. And she is just fully involved. She is part of the Medakeda project, the Medakeda 3 project that is going on in Uganda right now. And we also have institutional members. So we've mentioned that the Busara Center is an institutional member based in Nairobi. IKI, Invest in Knowledge, is an institutional member based in Malawi, and they were hosts for the 2017 workshops. And they showed up in full force for the workshops. Many of their senior research manager level and the research director level came to the workshop, and they have continued to collaborate with EGAP network members.
I'll just pick up here to talk about a few other examples of how the learning days have actually translated into research opportunities and learning collaborations. So the learning days have supported collaboration between researchers in the global North and global South working together. So a great illustration of that is in the research collaboration between a team consisting of 2 US-based scholars, so Chris Blattman and Donald Green, who are both EGAP members, working in collaboration with Daniela Ortega from the Colombian government and Santiago Tobon, who is a political scientist based in Colombia. They collaborated on a study looking at hotspot policing strategies in Bogota. And it was a large-scale randomized control trial that involved, the full buy-in of the Bogota municipal authorities, and the collaboration, owes, a large part to the fact that Santiago Tobon himself was a 2016 Learning Days participant in the Santiago edition. He's now an EGAP member. Again, Green and Blattman are EGAP members, and Ortega is from the Colombian government. And it's these sorts of collaborative undertakings that we're trying to support. And so the Learning Days contribute to a kind of methodological, foundation that everybody can work off of in developing these sorts of collaborations. Next slide, please. Another illustration is this example of the Learning Days supporting collaboration between government researcher and academic researcher. So we have a collaboration here that's between a few academic researchers, Robert Blair, Guy Grossman, and Anna Vilka, and then Benjamin Kashero, who works in the Office of the Prime Minister of Uganda. They collaborated together to do a test of what in Uganda they referred to as the Muyanga model of community policing, which was a strategy to try to build trust and cooperation between police and citizens in urban areas in Uganda. And this collaboration owed a large, there was a contribution, I should say, from the Learning Days insofar as Kashero, he attended the Learning Days workshops that were held in concert with the WGAPE network meetings in Abu Dhabi in 2017. And so through that, was, offered methodological training that facilitated the collaboration that he ended up striking with Blair and Grossman, who are both EGAP members, and then Anna Vilka, who was a graduate student at the time and is now a fellow with EGAP. So again, an example here of, in this case, researcher and then government collaboration where the foundation here was built on the basis of the government partner here having had the opportunity to participate in the Learning Days, and therefore, again, to have a methodological foundation that they could all work from in developing this collaboration. Next slide, please. So these are examples of outcomes from the Learning Days initiative thus far. Nahomi characterized the way that we've carried out the Learning Days workshops thus far. And so now we're looking to the future And what we want to do is to expand the Learning Days concept. So one thing that we're doing is to translate the curriculum material and accompanying resources into Spanish and French. That curriculum material includes a book that also inside the book contains links to pedagogical material that those who are interested in putting on a workshop themselves are able to use. And we have a link to that actually in the chat now if you're interested. We are sort of expanding the types of workshops that we're interested in doing as part of this initiative. So these include refresher workshops for past alumni of the Learning Days. We did our first version of this last fall, where we had alumni from previous Learning Days participating in a refresher workshop that aimed to very specifically develop skill and offer advice in putting together research proposals for competitive grants. We're also working to offer Learning Days that are run through the regional hubs. So these would be run out of the regionally located institutions that will serve as the regional hubs, and then the Learning Days instruction will all be led by regionally based EGAP members and researchers who have the methodological expertise to offer this training. We're developing also new Learning Days tracks for practitioners specifically, and also for journalists. The idea here is that it's not the case that only those who would want to go on and become researchers themselves, have a need for access to this type of material, but also practitioners who would be interested in either commissioning this type of work or being involved in a collaboration, but not as a co-researcher, but maybe as an implementing partner or otherwise, collaborating to help facilitate this type of research, may be interested, and so therefore would stand to benefit from access to this type of training. Similarly, journalists who are in a position to try and interpret and disseminate findings from this type of research would benefit from this type of training, so that they can sort of judge the quality of different studies and have a deep understanding of what goes into the production of this type of work, and then also to be able to convey the insights with more clarity, hopefully. And then finally, a practice that we're trying to do more regularly is to have the Learning Days tied to small grant rounds. So we did this with a series of small grants to fund research on basically experiences under the COVID pandemic and government responses to the COVID pandemic. We had a small grant round that was tied to the refresher workshop that we had done last fall. We'd like to do this more regularly and essentially to allow for researchers to develop their skills through the workshops, to have opportunities to then apply those in research projects that we can fund through small grant rounds. So we can now turn to the Q&A section. We've got, about a half hour or so. If you'd like to ask any questions or are interested in more information, feel free to put a question in the chat. We'll read aloud. If you're okay with having your name shared as well, please your name in the chat. Put your name in the chat as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hi, I see a question from Meredith. Thank you so much for coming to this presentation. So how are the locations of the Learning Days selected? So a lot of this is dependent on having host institutions who are able to, connect with their networks of scholars who might be interested and are able to, help with the logistics. So we are very much open to, hearing from other organizations that would like to organize a workshop similar to the Learning Days, or co-host with us. That is it's mostly the availability of our hosts that determines the locations. We have a longer history with our networks in Latin America and Africa, but we are generally interested in the Global South more broadly. Yeah, so, and I also see a question from Pravin. Hello. So it would be great to talk with you about organizing something similar to this in Nepal. Perhaps we could talk about this offline separately from this chat here, but we'd be very excited. Both Cyrus and I have some experience in Nepal, and it would be great. Thank you.
I should say, just to add to what Nahomi was saying, Praveen was asking, if a research organization was interested in having this sort of training, would it be possible? And those types of collaborations are definitely, what we're trying to do more regularly. So in the way that we've been doing the learning days previously, we've had capacity to do something like 2 or 3 a year. And so we've had to be a bit selective in that regard. But insofar as we're now trying to expand the reach of this model through the regional hubs and allowing regional hubs to kind of offer their own programming as well, that would allow for more of this, type of more spontaneous collaboration to take place. That's what we're hoping. At least. We're also trying to, connect with some existing learning networks that we think, would allow for very, sort of fruitful collaboration in terms of capacity building. So we have, for example, an initiative that we're starting to develop with the UNDP Accelerator Labs to try and integrate some of our activities into their learning network as well. And so those sorts of opportunities are especially appealing as well.
And just to jump in on that last question as well, part of the idea behind the Learning Days book that I think both Nahomi and Cyrus mentioned is that it's really a resource for instructors. So it's a resource for people interested in running a experimental methods workshop for themselves. There are lots of slides in there, lots of resources that you can link to for workshop participants. And we are very interested in doing what we can to support such workshops. So I pasted an EGAP email address in the chat for anyone interested in reaching out and starting that conversation.
Okay. I also see a question from Ryan. A key product for academic learning days is their own research design. What do you anticipate similar products would be for practitioners and journalists? So one of the ideas we had was that we would like people to develop the skills to consume this kind of research really intelligently and then ask the right kinds of questions of a piece of research. So one of these would be one of these could be like a blog post or a policy memo type digestion of academic research, and leading to the kinds of questions for what kind of questions would they like answered to help people make decisions, or to what kinds of things for journalists, what kinds of questions are answered here and what kinds of questions remain unanswered would be the kind of thing that we'd like journalists to be able to take away. Another part of this is that being able to find the kind of research that is relevant and being able to digest some of this is one of the skills that we'd like to develop as part of these workshops. And so we're thinking about products that relate to that. But Ryan, if you have other ideas, we're all ears on this too. So, not just Ryan, everybody, but thank you.
Yeah, to add to that as like a concrete example, with the regional hub that we're setting up in Bogota through the Universidad de los Andes, they're going to focus their activities in the coming year on issues pertaining to migration and forced displacement. And the idea there is to basically foster a set of, something like on the order of 3 or 4 researcher practitioner collaborations, to carry out, research and sort of stimulate learning agendas in this area, in this sector. And so the thought there is that in this particular case, the researchers that are likely to be involved are all more or less experts already in evaluation methodology. But the thought was that the practitioner organizations will be a mix of some more international NGO types where the staff may have already had some training, but then also some civil society organizations. And so the idea is to do a learning days that's run out of the regional hub that will bring people, put people on sort of a common page, common wavelength in talking about how a collaborative research project could be undertaken. And so introducing this material in a way that's very much geared toward turning rough ideas for a collaboration to something concrete that both the practitioners and the researchers will be respectively contributing to and aiming towards. So there's a common understanding of the goals and methods and what the possibilities are for this type of research collaboration. Great. Any other questions or thoughts that people would like to share? Well, if not, then thanks very much for coming out. The links are there in the chat to the website. So egap.org is the link to the main EGAP website, and you'll find direct, Matt's just put the link specifically to the Learning Days materials there. Matt, why don't you put one more time the link to the Learning Days book as well, which contains all the curriculum information. And then if you're curious about learning more or connected to an organization that might be interested in becoming involved, then please feel free to reach out. And then this presentation will be available as a recording through the gLOCAL portal, and then we'll see if we can find a way to share it more generally. If you're interested in sharing with others, please reach out about that as well. Great, thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.